Hi, Bobby.
So you're going to see it come up now on my page.
Wait, on your Facebook page?
Yep. So we're live. We're live now.
Hang on, let me go there. I'm on your.
Yeah, it doesn't. No one's probably going to show up until obviously like 11:30, since that's what we told them. But so it's fine. This is just us. You know, I don't say anything that you don't want anybody to hear right now, though, Rob. Just I want to make sure that.
Do I go to? So I should go to 2 steps forward coaching.
Correct.
Okay. Oh, there I am.
So see how that's what's so cool about this technology is that basically Zoom allows me to go live and stream through Facebook or YouTube, either or.
Is it it's a little delayed, isn't it?
It's a little.
Yeah. Okay.
And we do have 3 people, so it's probably one of them is you and maybe one of them is me, but we, are going to give it some time. We're not going to, but we're live. So we are live.
We're live.
How are you doing today? This is, I know, the big day here in the United States of America. What a day.
I know, it's so exciting. I am proudly wearing my flag sweater, which I wear every voting day. And hopefully everybody is getting out there and voting. And if you've already voted, which I already have, please volunteer if you can, or drive someone, or take snacks to people in the lines, or do something.
Exactly. Get out there and make sure that your voice is being heard and counted. It's so important, especially I think, given the climate that we're in, and it's very important to get out there and just make sure that you're representing who you want to lead this country into 2021.
Couldn't agree more.
So yeah, so we're live. Let me go check and see if there's any more. So it doesn't look like any more people have joined, but that doesn't. A lot of people do always ask about the recording. They're like, oh, I can't join. So they'll get this on the replay and they'll be able to find it because I'm going to promote it afterwards as well.
Got it. It looks a little stormy where you're at, buddy.
It might be, it's definitely overcast here, and it's in, we're in Miami, but it's sort of overcast, and we had a cold front, which, being from the north, and I am from the Midwest also, I'm originally from Ohio, like you. And when people say, oh, there's a cold front coming through, I just laugh, because a cold front means that it's maybe in the high 70s. It's not, it's not that cold. But you see people wearing their puffer jackets here when it gets this cold. So it is a very interesting place being down here in Miami.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting here. It's going to be about 50 today. And yesterday it was in the 30s when I got up and walked my dog, Pablo. And then over the weekend it's supposed to be in the 70s. So go figure.
All right, so let's just go ahead. It's 11:30, and if people join, they join. So hello, everyone. If you're joining, hopefully, if people start, coming in as this continues. My name is Kevin Hunting, and I am the founder of 2 Steps Forward Coaching. I'm a life and leadership coach, and I have the greatest pleasure of having Rob Gagnon here, who is this amazing personality, first off. Second off, this amazing professional who has really spent his entire career, right, for the most part, in specialty retail and retail across so many channels and so many different brands. And we'll get into that a little bit more. So I am so happy that you're here, Rob, sharing, some of your deepest, darkest secrets.
I don't know about that, but it's lovely to be here, and thank you so much for inviting me. I'm so to do on this election day.
That's true. And if you're out there and you're listening, if you didn't hear it earlier in the taping, because we were live, get out there and vote. It's so important. It's such a big day for every American. So please get out there. And so it's really meant to be conversational style. So it's pretty informal, Rob, but I'd love for you to just share a little bit first off of like just your background, like your overall experience, where you worked, some of the highlights that maybe you can recall that you know, in your overall career to date.
Well, before we start though, I'd like to say two things. One is because we're in this pandemic and everybody's looking for great things to watch on Netflix or Amazon or Hulu or whatever you watch. So I have two things to plug, and I'm not a sponsor of either of them. One is Emily in Paris. It's so cute. It's awesome, and it's if you like fashion, there's great fashion in it, and if you love Paris, there's wonderful shots of Paris in it. It just makes me want to go back to Paris, and I mean, I've been to Paris 150 times, and it's really wonderful and delightful and very happy. And so that's one. And then the second one, which is really awesome, is a documentary on Helen Reddy, who passed away about 2, maybe 3 weeks ago now. She wrote "I Am Woman," the anthem for the ERA movement in the 70s, and it's a wonderful documentary. And in that, there is a trans woman who plays a wonderful part. Her name is Jordan. I can't pronounce the last name. Raskopoulos, something like that. Anyway, I did some research on her, and she gave a great TED talk, and it's amazing. It's about anxiety and, you know, how to handle it and how to deal with it. So it was just wonderful, and I always like to support other people out there. So it's great. If anyone gets bored and don't have anything to watch those two.
So I think we talked last night. I've seen all of Emily in Paris, and it is quite. If you want to be taken away to sort of a lighthearted, fun place that's just filled with lots of great fashion. First off, like the outfits are top notch, and just the scenery, of course, being shot in Paris is amazing. It's a great thing to just sort of take your mind away from all of the, like you said, the current situation, and that so much of the stress and I think anxiety that so many individuals have been experiencing over the course of the past 3, 4, 5 months.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Good escape.
exactly.
Well, I've always loved fashion. Even as a little kid, I loved fashion. I always helped I have two older sisters, and I always helped them get dressed and my mother dress. And, you know, it's just, to me, it's a fun thing to do. And I love fashion and have always loved fashion. So I graduated from college with 2 degrees, one in business, because my mother really wanted to make sure I had something to fall back on. And then the other one was in fashion. So yeah, so that's kind of how it all started. I started working for the Limited Group, which was Express and Structure and all of those. I went to school in Ohio, and they are obviously based in Columbus, so it was an easy transition. And then I started working for Victoria's Secret, and that was a lot of fun. I did that for over 15 years, I think.
I didn't know that. That's interesting. I didn't know that you worked at Victoria's Secret.
Yeah, it was wonderful. It was during like the 90s, and you know.
Oh, that's when it was just like this powerhouse with the annual, like the fashion show that was taking it to a whole nother level, I think, from what people really exposing people to just all that creativity. And that was like, it was an annual event people look forward to.
Yeah. And we traveled a lot, and I got used to traveling on a private jet, which I have to say, if anyone ever gets the opportunity, do it. It's awesome. And I saw the world, so I'm very grateful for my experiences there. And then we moved to California. I moved to a place outside of San Francisco called Mill Valley, which is in Marin County, Marvy Marin. It's beautiful and absolutely lovely there. It's absolutely in my view, one of the most beautiful places in the world. And I started working for the Gap, and that's where I met you.
Exactly.
And
at Old Navy.
Old Navy. It was a lot of fun. I cherish my years at Gap. I really do. We had a lot of fun and did a lot of wonderful things, met a lot of wonderful people, and learned a great deal. So that's
what
really
would you say that your time at Gap, what would you say for yourself was one of your biggest insights as like a developing leader, right? Because you were in pretty senior leadership roles there at Gap Inc. And so what do you think, like, what would be one or two things that you could think of that you're like, wow, this really helped me, or this was something that helped propel me forward even more in my career?
Well, I would say two things. One is be yourself. You know, don't ever try to be anyone you're not. Just be yourself, which is easy to say now that I'm older and have more experience. But when you're young and you're coming up in the world, and you want to accelerate your career, it's easy to become something you're not. And thankfully, I never did that. But it's easy to see where you could. And when I look back over my career, again, I told you I'm old. The places where I was the most unhappy in my career were the places where I wasn't being myself. I wasn't able to feel like I was able to be myself. Um, and then another thing that I learned at Gap, which I absolutely love, and I use it all the time, is um, let the tornado pass and then go in and talk to people. So sometimes it's so easy to get sucked up in the drama of whatever
That's really
day-to-day
good.
stuff you're in. Art Peck told me that one, and I adore him. I really think he's awesome. Let the tornado pass and then go in and see what's going on. Because sometimes it's so easy to get caught in that drama of it all and just kind of take a sideline and then go in. And the other thing is, and I'm probably going to stumble this one, but it's divided together, aligned apart, which sounds weird, right? So let me say it again.
Yeah, yeah.
Divided together,
Okay.
aligned apart. And that was from Glenn Murphy, who was the CEO of Gap before Art Peck took over that position. He's a wonderful man, super smart, learned a ton from him. And aligned apart, not aligned together. So when we're together, we can argue, duke it out, have differing points of opinions as a
Mm-hmm.
leader. But the minute you walk out the door, you need to be aligned with whatever decision you've made. So it's okay to
Ah, okay. I think that
argue.
makes a lot of sense. So what I'm hearing you say too, right, is allow for the discourse of differing opinions, of people's unique perspectives, point of view, and overall experience, right? Because at that level too, everyone's bringing their own experiences in terms of their business acumen to the table. But I love that once a decision is made, that there's no more second guessing that is the path that we're taking, or this is the direction that we're going in. And so everyone needs to get behind that once we sort of walk out of that room or whatever, takes time.
So divided together, united apart. That's the saying. Divided together,
Interesting.
apart, which I thought was always good, and I always remember that. I thought that was really great advice.
And the other one that you brought up that, funny enough, has come up a lot recently with some of the clients that I do have is this notion of authenticity, and how I think important it is for someone to develop their own individual like leadership style, right? That's because everyone's unique and different in terms of who they are. But I think it's really interesting that you said it's a bit easier for you now in where you're at in your overall career and your journey that you've been on. But it is, I think, a really challenging concept for people who might be in their later, late 20s, early 30s, that sort of space in your overall career. It is a real challenge sometimes, I think, to really understand how to show up as your authentic self, because I think you have all these right beliefs sometimes about how you think you're supposed to show up, which means that you're basically holding back, or that you are, again, not really being who you are. And it's interesting that you said there are moments that your unhappiest moments were when you were not being yourself and being true to who you are.
And they were bitterly unhappy. They were
Wow.
really not great moments when I look back. And you kind of, when you get older, you reflect on things, and I figured out that I wasn't allowed to be myself. So
Mm.
to me, I would say those are the big ones. But also when I was at Gap, we put out a video, which is there's two things in my life that I'm most proud of. One is the title of being an uncle. It's the most important title to me that I will ever hold. And then the second thing is we put out a It Gets Better video when I was at Gap. And that was, I had a gentleman come to me who worked on my team. His sister had committed suicide. She was gay and had a real struggle with it, and committed suicide, which is an absolutely horrible thing. And when he came back from the services, when he came back to work, he came into my office and said, I need to talk to you. And I was like, well, oh gosh, whatever we can do to help. And he's like, Gap is a big company. We should have a It Gets Better video out there, because other companies had started doing it. And It Gets Better video is really around the Trevor Project, which is supports LGBTQ plus with suicide prevention, and among other things. But its focus, one of its focuses, is around that. And we were able to get, in a $16 billion corporation, we were able to get that video from start to finish out to the world in 2 weeks, which was unheard of. And, there's a lot of bureaucracy and, a lot of red tape and a lot of kind of getting lots of approvals. And I was really happy that we were able to get that done. And actually, Glenn Murphy, he was the CEO. He called me from China. He was traveling. He called me from China and said, which I love this. He said, whatever roadblocks you have in getting this done, you let me know and I will eliminate them. Which, that doesn't happen. That just happens. And for someone like him to say that, I've never forgotten it. And the hope that we potentially, by putting a video out like that, have helped just one person, it's truly one of my proudest moments as a person.
That's amazing. And how did you, like, what role, funny, playing off of that, because what role do you feel that you play in that space as a leader, right? Like, I think for you just have a way of connecting too with individuals. It doesn't matter really, who they are in terms of whether they're LGBTQ or not. But what is the role that you feel that you should be playing in regards to helping to be that model, if you will, for other LGBTQ individuals, and whether it's in Gap or other organizations that you've worked in?
Well, I think for anybody, regardless, as a leader, I think you have to be empathetic, number one, hands down. You have to be able to listen to your team. You have to sympathize and empathize with them. And we're all human. We're human. Something that may be monumental to you may mean nothing to me, but I still have to address how monumental it feels to you. So I think that was the first thing. And quite honestly, when he said this to me, he was so upset and he was crying. And I was like, yeah, we'll get it done. Like, it didn't even cross my mind that this is going to be hard to do, difficult. I'm not sure if we'll be able to get it done. Like, it didn't even cross my mind. I was just, yep, let's get it done. And so, not surprisingly, but actually surprisingly that we were able to get it done so quickly. So, and I think it's still out there. I haven't checked, but I'm pretty
I'm sure the video, right, is out there on I think Gap Inc. probably has their own YouTube channel, I'm assuming, or.
Well, I think if you just Google it, I think it's still out there. But anyway, it's a bit too long now that I look back at it now, but whatever. Hopefully it's helped someone in the world.
I can say personally, and based on my experience, having been in the team that you were really, leading merchandising at oldnavy.com, for me, it was inspirational for me as a gay male as well, to really witness, to see you in action, but more so, I think, again, you have a very unique way of making connections with people. And funny, you brought up the word empathy, and really listening to people and understanding that what might be monumental for one person is not the same for another. And I think for me, it's an interesting topic in leadership around how emotions, which empathy is really kind of in that feeling space, how those, I think, can be very powerful in terms of making connections and being a very solid leader. Because, right, I'm sure leadership styles where there's almost the absence of emotion or feelings, right? It's just so based on kind of that analytical, pragmatic approach. And so it's interesting that you threw it right out there, but I've talked with other individuals where that's not something that typically comes up, because I think a lot of people also, it's a place where it can bring up, I think, a lot of discomfort in terms of being able to express what you feel, right? Sometimes there's I think, a place of vulnerability there, but I also love how for you as a leader, it's probably, I think, been a huge benefit to your overall success.
Yeah, well, thank you. But I think you as a leader, you have to be that way. You have to embrace your team. And another thing that I learned, which is the simplest thing, and it costs nobody any money, it costs nothing. All you have to do is say thank you.
Mm.
And what, I when I was at the Gap, and sorry to keep talking about the Gap, but I spent so much
No,
time there. Um, Bill Clinton came and spoke to the senior leadership, and it was awesome. I mean, it was great. Whether you like his politics or not, he's a very dynamic speaker, and he kind of is very motivating. And I think it was in his talk or somewhere at my time at Gap, someone said to me, write a thank you note every week, every Friday. Write a thank you note to someone on your team, to someone in your family, doesn't matter where. And I try to do that every week. And it's you don't realize what kind words can do to someone and how wonderful that can be. So that is definitely something I've learned. And writing a thank you takes 5 minutes. Hey Kev, thanks for the wonderful hour and a half we spent together talking about business. Whatever it was, thanks. All the best, Rob.
absolutely.
I mean, those things, and I remember when I left the Gap, there was a woman who came to me and handed me a stack of notes from me that I had given to her through the mail, like, hey, great job on that presentation, awesome, whatever I had said. She's handed them to me and said, these got me through the tough times. And I was like, oh my God, like I didn't remember writing half of them. And but it just seared it in my memory that we all have the power to make someone's day. And if you can, obviously
Sure.
be authentic, but if you
Right.
can, you should, and we should do that. So I know that's a little flowery, but as an
No,
exec,
no, I love it. And how, on that same vein of just thinking, like, who would you say for yourself in your, you did mention Glenn Murphy earlier, and you also mentioned Art Peck, in terms of people who have really inspired you or left a very left you with an impression about what it means to be a leader and what leadership looks like. But was there a particular individual, like earlier on in your career, like either a well-known business leader or someone that you really admired, that not help guide you, but at least it was someone that you could aspire to be like, or that you were like, wow, I love the qualities that this person possesses as a leader. Was there a particular individual for you?
I would say there were a couple, but one of my bosses early on in my career, her name is Pia Ferrario, and she was at Victoria's Secret, and she was a student of the numbers. I'm in
Mhm.
merchandising, and merchandising is considered, an art, which it is obviously, but there's also a science to it. And she leaned a little bit more towards the science piece of it and was very astute in the numbers. And she taught me many, many things. It's one thing to have a great taste level and to be able to pick a trend, but it's also amazing when you can financially, from sales and gross margin dollars, make that a big idea for the company. And she taught me wonderful things about that. And actually, she kind of sculpted my early career, because I had just moved to New York by myself, scared to death.
Mm.
um I have a wonderful cousin who lives in New York, and she certainly took me under her wing a few times. And my uncle, every time he came to town, would take us to dinner. And I know that sounds so trivial, but when you're first moved to New York, you're living in a studio apartment and you're living paycheck to paycheck. To go have a nice meal at a nice restaurant meant the world. Um, but when I moved there, she would once a week take me out for dinner and just make sure mentally I was doing okay. She knew I was doing okay professionally, but she wanted to
Hmm.
mentally and emotionally I was doing okay. And it was wonderful. It was wonderful. And I am still in touch with her and I give her a lot of credit.
Awesome.
Yeah.
What, I mean, this might be on the flip side. What would be one major, or it could be one major obstacle, but one major obstacle that you experienced either as it could be at any point in your career, but what was maybe a really big thing that again left you like, wow, like it sat with you for so long in terms of what it taught you, and what you were able to take away from something that was a huge obstacle for you in your career?
Yeah. I was young in my career, and I won't say the name of the company, but I was working for a very big company. I just started, and I think I was maybe, I don't know, less than a month into it, and I had to meet with the head of HR to make sure, all the paperwork was done, all this that stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
I said to her, "Oh, when am I getting my insurance card?" And she said, "Oh, it should be, you should be getting it this week." And I said, "Great, because my partner at the time was having surgery in a couple of weeks, and I needed to kind of get my card, his card, so that he could do all of his stuff for
Uh-oh.
surgery. It was a big surgery." And she said, "Oh, we don't cover partners." And stupid me did not, think about that before I signed on the dotted line. And I just looked at her and I said, "You're kidding." And she said, "No, we don't cover partners." And she said, "We're thinking about it." And I said, "Well, then I have to leave. I can't work here because I need to cover my partner's insurance, period."
Mhm.
Like it's just not negotiable. And the words came out of my mouth. I'm not even thinking like, "Oh shit, I have a mortgage to pay," all these other things didn't even cross my mind. I was just like, I can't work here. And she's like, "Oh, wait, we're looking into it." And I said, "Listen, my partner's, surgery is scheduled for a month from now. You have until a month to get this done." And she's like, "We're on it." And somehow they made it
Oh,
happen. And
wow.
I would say they were already moving in the direction, but I certainly
Gotcha.
picked them to do it. But it made me think, we've come a long way in terms of gay rights and partner benefits, all that. I mean, that was not talked about in my early career at all. And when I was thinking, when I was growing up, the only gay character on TV was on a show called Soap, which was a kind of a I don't know, soap opera kind of thing, but it was called Soap. And Billy Crystal played a gay character. And there was one. And today we have like Schitt's Creek, which the name of a wonderful show, but just shows gay people in a wonderful light.
I mean,
So,
Pose is an amazing, groundbreaking
oh,
show, right? Pose to me is, and also another groundbreaking show in terms of what it represents. And also, it was historically set in an era like which was like the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and New York City and larger metropolitan areas. But so
yeah,
wow, that's an interesting. So in that you were able to obviously garner and learn how important, right, it is that the company that you obviously are working for offers some sort of same-sex benefits, which are so much more common. I mean, they're pretty much a given in most large organizations today, but when you were talking about this in this moment, that was probably not when so many countries or companies were just starting to get on board.
absolutely. It was probably, gosh, at least 20 years ago. And I just don't even know how those words came out of my mouth without even thinking of the consequences. But I knew I couldn't stay there if they didn't support me for being me. So
Absolutely.
somehow they figured it out. But it was interesting in thinking about this conversation with you today is how far we've come in a short period in my lifetime. I told you I'm old, but in my lifetime, the short period of that time, we've come a long way. Not saying we don't have a long way to go,
Mhm.
but we have made some strides. I mean, people can get married. That was unheard of when I was growing up. There was not one gay person in my town, or openly gay person
Mhm.
in town when I was growing up. So it's just interesting how times have changed, and all for the good, for the good.
Absolutely. I think too, it's sometimes easy, like we sometimes forget. It's easy sometimes to get caught up in what we still don't have. And I'm not saying that there isn't more work to be done, but I think it's always good where you're what you're sort of saying, stop and just reflect on how far things have come, right, over a fairly short period of time. And again, there is more work to be done. There's always more work to be done, but it's always good to, even in your professional life, to stop and always reflect on what got you to where you are today, and to not lose sight of that, because sometimes you get so caught up in the present moment about, or the future of, where I'm supposed to be, and you lose track of all of these amazing skills and experiences that you have accumulated over time, because you just take it for granted. You're like, oh, that was in the past, but it's certainly things that can help, still help you move forward in your career. So how, when you talk about, like, the obstacle piece, do you feel, was there ever a situation, I know you talked about being you and your authenticity, and in terms of being who you were affected you, but was there any moment that you think just, being a gay male had created, I don't know, I don't want to say an awkward situation, but for you, what became an issue professionally? Or no, you've been so fortunate in the places that you've worked that you've never felt that who you are as an individual and your sexuality has ever affected your overall success as a.
I don't I don't think so, but I grew up professionally in a pretty gay friendly environment. So I would say no, but it does make me remember I had gotten recently promoted at Gap. I was now a vice president at that time. And I mean, you know me, you know what I used to wear. I wore shorts and a cashmere sweater and flip-flops to work every day, regardless of the weather. Yeah, I mean, right?
Yeah, I think there were like camo shorts too, if I remember. Like there were camo shorts, there were khaki shorts. I mean, you had shorts in every color too.
I did. I love shorts and cashmere. It's and sandals. I mean, whatever. That's who I am. And
Mm-hmm.
I remember like it was like the first week I had been a vice president, and I pulled into the garage, and I got into the elevator, and an executive, a big executive, got in the elevator with me and just kind of looked me up and down and said, "Oh, did you think it was casual Friday today?" And I looked, I'll never forget it. And I looked at her and I said, "Do you realize that I have the best business in the company?" And then I just hit the door open button and got off of the elevator. And I was walking to my office. You know where my office,
Mm-hmm.
these long hallways, finally get to my office. And I was shaking by the time I got to my office. And I sat down and I was like, oh God, I'm probably going to be fired for that. And then, you know, F it. I do have the best business in the
Right.
company. Doesn't matter what you wear. It truly doesn't. If I feel comfortable in shorts and cashmere, let me be in shorts and cashmere. No
Absolutely.
disrespect to any, and there wasn't, I mean, there wasn't really a dress code there. So I would say that there was nothing from my sexuality point of view that held me back, but me being me sometimes potentially could have held me back, like in that instance where conforming to wearing jeans every day or something like that, which is just not me. So, and we lived in California, for God's sakes.
Right. Which it was already like kind of a laid back vibe, which I know is very cliche to say, but it is. It is a much more, I'd say, informal kind of and especially in San Francisco. I mean, when you talk about all the tech startups that were there and that are now just booming, it really does have that sort of essence. And so it definitely different working there than it would be in, even in the Midwest. I think in certain places, right? It's just it's a function of the geographics and the people and the environment. So um, how did you invest in your overall personal growth and development as a leader? Like what did you do to continue to push yourself in terms of building self-awareness or your emotional intelligence and those components, which again, at your level, are really the biggest distinguishing factors, right? Because it's not so much about, it is about skill, but it's really less about skill because you've already proven that piece of the puzzle, right? You've gotten to a place where, like you said, you know the numbers, you know how to run the numbers. What have you done? Is anything specific that you've done to sort of keep pushing yourself and growing?
Well, I think, I get inspired by my team, because I'm usually the oldest person on my team. So I get inspired by them, and helping them inspires me. But I do have to say, you have to take time for yourself. I love to garden. I love to golf. I love to swim. Um, I have my dog Pablo. I take him for a walk every day. And on stressful days when, working from home and everything kind of gets to you,
Mm-hmm.
I just decline a meeting. Sorry, can't do it. And I'll take him for a long walk and just kind of clear my head. So you have to kind of invest in yourself. But I find I get the most inspiration usually from my team. They inspire me. They make me think differently. They push me to be hopefully a better leader.
And how, on that note, like with this whole idea of work-life balance, now that we're working from home and since COVID, right? That how would you say that's impacted you? Like just pre-COVID and kind of post-COVID, what would you say have been some of the biggest gains, maybe the positive things that have happened to you because of this?
Well, I think for any industry, well, I shouldn't say any industry, but most industries, I think what this has proven is that people can work from home and be productive and be successful. I think, you know, most CEOs didn't really believe that. Oh, I've got to check in. Are people working? Are they really working?
Mm-hmm.
Not working? And I certainly understand that thought process. However, I think this kind of blows that theory out of the water. And I think this is going to change how commercial real estate is managed because, I also lived in New York for over 20 years. And I just think of all those office buildings that are not being utilized, and probably won't be in the near future. And then I also think it's helped people communicate better, right? You can't have hallway conversations because you're not there. You can't read a person's expression or know what they're feeling by looking at their face, their eyes, like what's going on, their body language. You can't really do that. I mean, you can a little bit on a Zoom call, but so I think you have to be more perceptive and ask more questions. So I think that from my point of view has really helped.
And that is a big topic right now. I know I've seen lots of people asking questions, especially like senior business leaders. How do you kind of navigate that team dynamic that you do manage a team of individuals? How are you managing that so that people do feel that they're informed and that they're in the loop, right? And that they're getting the appropriate amount of information? I mean, what tactics perhaps can you share that have worked for you in your team during this time?
I would say a couple of things. One is, I think, you just have to be honest with your team. I had a town hall maybe a week or two ago where, probably over 100 people were on it. And I started it off with mental health. I'm like, you have a decline button for every meeting you are invited to. If it's too much, decline the meeting. There's a FOMO, fear of missing out.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, if I'm not in the meeting, I'm not important. Well, I have to call BS on that. Um, and um, I think, like I said earlier, there are days when I get up and I usually start my day about 7:30, and I end about 7 or 7:30. That's 12 hours a day. And sometimes it's literally talking to my computer the whole day, back after back after back after back. And I'm certainly not complaining, but there are times when you need to go timeout. I need to go for a walk. I need to run and get lunch. I need to not look at my computer screen and go do something else. So I started my meeting with that, and it's truly about your mental health. And you know, some days it's too much. It just is. It's too much for
Absolutely.
me. I can only imagine what it is for people on my team. So I I think being honest about that, and I gave many examples where, you know, this is a wonderful tool. It is a wonderful tool. It is absolutely amazing. We all love our iPhones or our phones. However, 90% of my team has their business email on their personal phone, right? They don't want to have two. I have two. They don't want to have two. So every time that light comes on and beeps that you get a new email, almost forces you to look at it and say, hey, what's going on? So I have told my team, like, you know, when your day is done, you know, turn your phone off or put do not disturb on or put it in your pocket, which of course is much easier to say than do. However, you know, you got to take time for yourself, for
And
sure.
I think that's so important because all those things, there's nuances in there that, like you said, each individual reacts how they react to it. Is, you know, a lot of people are connected to their phone and it's hard for them to put it down. And if a text or an email comes in, let's say at 8 o'clock at night after they've already worked, you know, a 13, 14-hour day, it's one of those things where um, being comfortable and okay with, like you said, having that boundary of I'm not going to check my phone. Or, I mean, if it's something urgent, probably yes, you would need to check it. But if it's not urgent, it's something that you can, it's going to be there tomorrow and it could be addressed tomorrow. And, but I think on a very individual level, it's great that you share that approach and overall kind of mentality, I think, with your team. But I think when you get down to individual team members, right, everyone has their own way of operating. And so being able to know, it's almost like a form of self-care too, that just know, make sure that you have those healthy boundaries when you need it. Like you said, take a walk with your dog, get up and walk around, go in, you know, if you have a backyard with maybe some beautiful flowers, or just be with nature, right? Take in your surroundings and know when you need to do that, because if not, you know, burnout happens. And I've actually heard so many clients as well talk about how, given this change and now working from home all the time, has actually meant that it necessitates more this idea of having boundaries, because your day just kind of bleeds into each other. Your days and nights, just there's no physical I'm leaving an office space, I'm walking out the door and getting in my car and driving home. You're home. So there's not these delineations, right, that used to exist, given when everyone was probably going into an office space and working and then leaving for the day.
Well, and now your office is your home,
Mhm.
which makes it that much more difficult to break it. The other thing that I do is I try to make sure that everybody puts their cameras on, because it just helps, obviously in smaller meetings, not in big meetings, but in small meetings, it just helps to build a connectivity there.
Mhm.
But I'm very respectful if people say, I don't want to turn my camera on. You know, I have said that on some of my, like, I can't do it today. I look like crap. I just, you know, I overslept. You know, the contractor was here. I had to meet with him. You know, whatever was going on in your day. Um, you know, I think just being communicative of how you are feeling um, starts to reduce that, you know, and some of the stress. Obviously, it's not going to get rid of all of it, but there's still some stress there.
And if you had, I think, what would you say? This is a tough question, I think. But what do you think has been the single biggest factor for that's resulted in your overall success?
Um, wow, that's deep. Um, I think that I think I just try to be myself, and I'm normally a happy, positive kind of guy, and I think when I am myself, I feel like I can shine. God, that sounds so cliche.
This is a commercial.
But I think it's interesting to me, having managed a lot of people over my career. It's interesting to me to see people like you, who you can see, you can tell when you're having a good day and you're confident. If I can instill confidence in anyone, to me that's a good day, because when you're confident you can conquer the world, or at least you feel like you can, and
Absolutely.
less inhibited. You're going to ask more questions. You're going to be more productive, in my point of view. And I mean, I've seen you present, and you can tell when someone's confident and when they're not. And to me, I think if you can instill confidence, and I've had great leaders who have instilled confidence in me. Uh,
Nice.
I
Funny, I
think
think that to me that gets at also the notion of believing, like having a belief in someone, but coming from that place, like you coming from that place of how you choose to interact with that individual is that you do believe in them, right? Because certainly I've had leaders where I think, I don't know if that's not been the case because I've never really asked the question, but I think you can tell when leaders don't really have instill that sense of confidence and belief in them, that their team, which probably stems from themselves initially, I think, is their own sense of confidence. But what a difference it makes when you know that someone's already telling you, you know what, I know you've got this. Like, right, that's different than, I'm not really sure if, are you going to be okay? That sense of doubt that can work its way in these are just nuances in leadership styles, but how powerful it can be when you are able to instill that in someone and they walk away going, wow, and he knows I can do this, I can do this.
right. Well, and I think it's also really important to instill confidence when someone fails.
Mm,
Build them back up. That's so important. And it's okay to fail. I mean, I just used this example in my town hall, but Colonel Sanders, the Kentucky Fried Chicken guy, we've all had it. Don't everyone say, oh, no, and we've all tried it. But he had success later in life. He had a lot of failures throughout his career, and I want to say he was in his 60s or 70s. So those failures became stepping stones to success, and that's what I try to tell my team. The other thing is, I have a wonderful family that is super
mm.
super supportive, and um, my twin brother, I don't know if he's listening, but he will be ticked that I'm telling this story. But um, I was working for the Gap, and at one point, many, many, many years ago, we decided to change the logo. Remember, it went from Gap in the blue box to being outside of the blue box, or whatever it was. You remember that? It was a long time ago, and there was
Mm-hmm.
huge um, backlash. People hated it, and I was running the Gap website at the time, so my team had to change it, and then worked all night, worked all weekend, and then go back and rechange it once we launched it. We launched it on I think a Monday, had to rechange it that night and go back to it on Tuesday. So huge debacle, and people were ticked off about it, and the press was all ticked off about it. And I remember calling my twin brother and like, oh, you don't understand, this is huge, oh my gosh, on and on and on, drama, 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 and he is he at the time was running a special needs school,
Mm.
and he's the director of a special needs school, and he's like, Rob, I had to take care of parents today who lost their child. He goes, I don't have time for this. And I was like, you know what? Thank you for putting it in perspective. And I love him for, what my drama was needed to be put in perspective. And we all need those people in our lives to say, you're a little too big for your britches there, buddy. And I can always count on him for that. But I think having a wonderful family and a supportive family that keeps your feet on the ground is I'm very blessed and lucky to have that.
That's amazing. So actually, I'm going to switch gears a little bit here because I was able to kind of reach out. We do have a lot of viewers with us, and actually, I'm going to take a question from her. This is from Bridget, Bridget Humphreys,
Yeah.
and She would like to ask you, like, what qualities actually do you look for in mentors?
What qualities do I look for in mentors? Well, I have to be honest. Bridget Humphreys is my niece. Mwah. I love you, dear. What qualities do I look for in a mentor?
Mentor.
I look for things that that the qualities that they currently own that I do not have. I look to learn what am I going to learn from this person, and is it a good fit? Depending on where you are in your career and what you're looking for, because there are times in my career where I have looked, I need more financial acumen, or I need to understand marketing a little bit better as so I would
Mm-hmm.
mentors that way. But then there's also times where I just need a friend. I need a friend who's not involved in my business that can just listen to me bitch about whatever I wanted to bitch about, let me get it out, and then give me a few pointers. So
Absolutely.
I love you, Bridge.
So there's one other question, because I have a question that I just came to me that I'm like, you know what? I cannot wait to ask this for Rob, but it would be like, I think our closing question, because it's going to be so much fun. Another question that she had was, what advice, how did you know actually when it was the right time to make like shifts in your career?
Boy, that's a good question. I think well, I know when you start to get bored, and that I knew when I had to leave Gap, and I knew when I
It's,
needed to go
did
back
you
to.
just feel like you were kind of going through the motions and you weren't, I don't think, right, you weren't personally perhaps getting a lot out of it like you did when you had first started. It's almost like you
Yeah,
need a new challenge almost, or a new problem, a major problem to kind of overcome or solve, or to be stimulated.
yeah, and I think when you aren't being inspired, or you don't feel inspired when you go to work every day, I think that's time to start reevaluating whether that's the right place. And funny, well, I don't know if it's funny, but when I left Gap, I went to a different company. It was my dream job. And literally the first day on the dream job, I texted Art Peck, who was CEO of the Gap, where I just left. I texted him and said, I don't think I made the right decision. And he's like, stay in touch and let me know how things go. You got to stick it out, but let's stay in touch. And we did stay in touch. And eventually, when I left that place, literally the day I went in to resign, Art Peck called me and said, I have a job for you. And he's like, I think he was in Africa or something. He was, I can't give you any details. I can't tell you what your salary is. I can't tell you anything. I just have a job for you. So if you want to resign, resign, and I'll have details for you. I probably shouldn't be saying that publicly, um, but anyway, and I did, and I trusted him, and I believed in him. So I think it's time to leave when you're not being inspired and when you're bored. If there's
Gotcha.
no leader in that company that you're like, oh my God, I want to be like that person, or I want that quality, time to go. And instinctively, I mean, you're a coach, you get this. Most people know when it's time to go, whether or not they act on it. But
That's yes, I think that's the piece that it doesn't, with most, that's why people seek coaching in many ways, is that you may consciously know that for yourself, in terms of what you want for yourself, but it's actually taking the action where it's not that things fall apart, it's just there's a disconnect there, because of course there's all these potential ramifications, right, by taking action. And to your point, making that type of a decision, which is, okay, I'm just going to resign, and hope no information about what the opportunity was that was in front of you, but at least having enough information to be able to say, you know what, I think this person knows me well enough that I'm going to resign, right? But in that space is where, people's, typically what their beliefs are about what they think is going to happen is where, there's work to be done, because it's really just something that they perhaps believe is going to happen, that once you start dissecting that piece of it, it the idea of that actually happening is like slim to none. It's just that we believe these things that we've accumulated over time. So this would be my last question for you, but you might have to think this one through because it's a fun question and it's out of nowhere. What if you had a theme song?
Oh, I already know it.
Oh, well, I thought it would be hard for you because you'd be like, oh, I don't know. But what would be your your theme song if you had a theme song? Which you do probably.
I do. It's one of my favorite songs. Of course, I'm old, so disco is very important to me. It's the extended play version of Diana Ross's "I'm the Boss" or "The Boss." It's called "The Boss," and it has nothing to do with being a boss. It's about love, and I I I love love, and I think there should be more love in the world, and
Awesome.
it's my theme song.
Wait, I do have one last question. Any parting words? Because I love it. I love the discussion. But any parting words that you would have for, whether they're LGBTQ or not, just individuals who are looking to make that move and kind of move upward in their career into like a senior role, senior business role. Any advice that you would want to, impart on those individuals?
Always be yourself. I can't say that enough. Always be yourself. Be honest with your boss and your boss's boss and your HR and whomever you're discussing this with. Be honest. Hey, I'm bored. Or, I mean, I wouldn't put it that way, but hey, I can take on more. I need to be challenged more. Um, I, I think those are, to me, if someone came to me and said, listen, I love what I'm doing, but I need more, I'd be like, okay, I've got 3 more projects. Let's start funneling them to this person.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would also start thinking, okay, they need a bigger role in the company. They need to be challenged more. What, future steps. And then the other thing I would say is, and someone said this to me, and God, it's so true. People usually leave companies because of their boss, not the company, right? So be a good boss. Try to be the best boss you can. Am I a good boss? I don't know. But I try every day to be a good boss, And if you are managing people, just try to be a good boss. Listen to your team and help them. Sometimes you need to be a sounding board. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
you need to be direct them. Sometimes you need to be a therapist. Sometimes you need to be a coach. Sometimes you just need to listen.
Well, I cannot thank you enough for taking almost an hour out of your day to be here and to share this. And this definitely, if you're hearing this on the replay, there's a lot of great information. And so I can't thank you enough for being here, Rob. And I know that you're going to you use the word shine. You're always shining and you take that shining light with you wherever you go. So thanks for sharing your light with us.
And I'm thankful that you think I'm shy. You're awesome, buddy. I love talking to you anytime, anything you need, I'm always here for you.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
You too, buddy.